Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Solar Energy Society of India, I welcome all the panelists and those who are participating on our Zoom network as well as Facebook Live. This is a very nice opportunity that has been available for us on behalf of Solar Energy Society of India. We all are almost in a lockdown situation since last couple of weeks, rather couple of months, and that has given definitely a disadvantageous situation. But at the same time, let's think of that whether we have something to think on the situation is today, situation which was yesterday, and what are the possible things that can be taken off, or the road that can be taken off, so that the solar industry and particularly manufacturing of in solar sector that can have some different roadmap or different approach. As you all know, Solar Energy Society of India is the oldest society in the field of solar energy, founded in 1978. On those days, it was basically from academia, researchers. Later on, as the things pass on, the developers, then researchers, and now most of the people who are in the field of solar energy are connecting with Solar Energy Society of India. And it was our try to get to reach every possible member, every possible citizen of India who can be handholding or who can be guided with the expertise that Solar Energy Society of India has. This background, let's come to the today's topic. What will be the manufacturing sector after COVID? This is the topic nearer to every one of us in the solar sector and in manufacturing sector. If we look at some past years, the things where our neighboring country had huge production or huge manufacturing of the solar sector, and whatever the cost on which they were offering the solar panels or solar sector manufacturing, that is affecting our cost. Whatever the our manufacturers, domestic manufacturers, they are in a position to have their products. So there was a gap, and every time our industry, though they have a quality, though they are trying for manufacturing the things, they had a fear that the neighboring country will offer it at a lower cost. There are other things which are involved in that, whether to tax on that or how to make that compatible and all these things. So this was situation. Now after COVID, there is a possibility that whatever the inputs that we were receiving in our country through this neighboring country, will that be same, or will there be a negative effect? Will the cost which they were earlier offering to us will be same or not? So these are the things which are broadly we can look in. Secondly, this is the opportunity for we all people. If the supply from neighboring countries is not to that extent, or it's not at a cost which is less than that, so can our manufacturers step in and they can do something, and let's have this disadvantage to turn to our advantage situation. We all must have thought on this. There are a lot of things, thoughts that are going on, and there are one or two examples which I want to share with you. Those are not with the solar sector, but in general, the Tata Power results were there some last week, and the surprising thing which was observed from my point of view is the net profit has gone up, while the net sale has gone down. Similarly, one of industry which has a employee strength of 3,500 employees, of course they are in a IT, so they had to take their employees from their places to their factory and back every day. So they have to employ the transport arrangement. now the owner shared with me that now these expenses which earlier I have to do, now I will not do post COVID. I will ask my staff to work from home because it is possible, or only ask to those who are in need to come to office. So these type of changes we have observed, and similar changes we may observe in our manufacturing industry in solar. So these are the general examples which I share you, which can be thought of that how the things are changing, or what are the observations we have received in this time. So now coming to other thing, we are not in a position to manufacture, or our industrialists or our manufacturing people have problems, or whatever the support they need, it was not there, or it was not to that extent which was expected. This may be the situation, but here I want to share one more thing to you, which is not exactly related to solar sector, but it is an encouraging thing. Before the COVID issue started, the PPE kits were not available in our country, and today the total number of PPE kits available per day is a huge. So what it indicates, that when there is some disastrous or such type of situation, we Indians have a tendency to work better. If you are interested in cricket, I can give some examples of Indian cricket team. Whenever they are in drastic trouble, or whenever you think that they cannot win, they will show you that they won the match. And in normal cases, we are confident of winning the match and then we are losing. So by taking the example of PPE kit, I would like to suggest, or I would like to push that, is it possible in the manufacturing sector of solar energy field? Can we do this type of miraculous thing? So to have different perspectives from those who are already in that field, in the field of manufacturing, we have a good panel today, and definitely they will share you the perspectives, the exact experiences they are having today, and possible road ahead. So I welcome all the panelists again, and thank you everyone who has joined. I thank my team who has taken efforts to make this thing possible. So on that note, I will hand over the proceedings, or for further deliberations, to Mr. Ajay Prakash Srivastav for his remarks.
Thank you, Prafulji. First of all, I would like to thank Solar Energy Society of India for organizing this event and thinking about manufacturing situation in India post-COVID. The thing is, manufacturing in the solar sector has always been a problem. Even before COVID came, it has been a problem almost, I would say, last 10, 12 years, when the National Solar Mission was actually launched. At that time, there was a lot of talk about manufacturing, even that mission, but there was a lot of demand, and that demand unfortunately was met by our neighboring countries. And unfortunately, the government in those days did not pay much attention given to the manufacturing in India. Even this government, when it came 6 years ago, they started talking about Make in India. A lot of discussions were held about making India, but nothing happened in the solar sector, except lot of solar module manufacturing units have come up in India. There we are, I would say, we are self-sufficient in module making units in India. And recently our Prime Minister talked about Atmanirbhar Bharat. Atmanirbhar means, what I understand from Atmanirbhar means that we should be self-sufficient in terms of solar. When we look at the context of solar, so we should be self-sufficient in solar manufacturing. Now, if we talk about Atmanirbharta in the field of solar sector, that means not only solar module, we should also make solar cells, which many companies are making. Many of companies which are here, they're also represented today, they are making. But we need to increase the solar cell manufacturing, and then go one step backward, and solar wafer manufacturing, because if we make solar module and we don't have enough capacity of solar cell, then we have to keep on importing, and that's against the principle of Atmanirbhar. And if we make solar cells and don't have solar wafers, then we have to import it. Then again, it's the spirit of Atmanirbhar. And if we go a step further, and if government really wants it, then we should make solar grid silicon in India. The technology for making solar grid silicon is a very simple it's not a very difficult technology, but it's a capital oriented technology. A lot of money is required for capital investment, but it can be done if we really want, if the government is really interested, if prime minister is really serious about having uh, uh, Atmanirbharta, then, and if our industrialists really want to do it, we can actually achieve solar silicon, solar wafer, solar cell, and solar modules. But this is what, how, we have to see how after this COVID-19, how we will do. We want to do a SWOT analysis, and in SWOT analysis, I think the strength that our country has is really great. We have great scientists, great engineers. We have the uh, advantage and capacity to achieve any kind of challenges in manufacturing. Our quality of our products, the module and the cell that we make in our country is not less than any other country. We can make good quality modules. Our modules have the people who make modules in our country have very good modules with good high efficiency. Cells are made in India with high efficiency. So we have that kind of the technical expertise to achieve that high quality products that we want. I just want to give one example. I met one long time ago, about 20 years ago. I met one IIT engineer, and he told me that he's in the power electronics. And I said, if you want to sell your power electronics, you will have to get it approved in the European Union and American lab. Otherwise, you cannot sell your power electronics to other countries. And he said, I can give you challenge that in 4 years' time, I can get my power electronic approved in Europe and America. And I think he did it also. So that kind of engineers we have even in our country who can bring good quality product. What was missing earlier and what we need now is the encouragement. I would not say support or subsidy. I would say encouragement from the government. We have the capacity to do things. Our people are expert. Finances are, with this, lot of announcements have been made in the past by the finance minister and the prime minister about availability of finance. How much is true, we will know in coming days, if the banks really bring out the credit and give the money to the industry for starting the manufacturing activity. But if we really want to do it, then we have the strength to do it. Our when we talk about weakness, the weakness, I would say very openly, is weakness is in our governmental system and regulations and controls. That's our weakness. That is the weakness that we feel, compared to some countries where government is in fact supportive to the industry. I feel in our country the government is finding a way to stop us from achieving activity. But hopefully that will change, because now when Pradhan Mantri, the Prime Minister, asks for Atmanirbhar or Make in India, and hopefully he will also put his attention on this idea, where we get support from the government, encouragement from the government by way of incentive or subsidy. That is one thing. By way of finances from the banks, that's another thing. But more towards relaxation of regulations and compliances and reports. And now earlier, before COVID, one of the problem that every businessman was facing were the compliances and reporting system. So many reports have to be filed, so many compliances have to be done. If there is if we don't waste our time on those things, we are very uh, entrepreneurial people. We can achieve a lot of things. So that is our weakness. I would say government control and this not encouragement is a weakness. Opportunity, of course, everybody knows that we need the clean power for our country. we need the clean power for our country. And one of the advantage that sometimes we forget in terms of solar, when we talk about large scale solar power plants and megawatt scale solar power plants, that is a good thing to have. But one of the things that is advantage of solar is actually a small size solar plant on the rooftop also can be done. So rather than making 500 megawatt plant, if we want to power a village and then bringing the electricity from far away to that village, why not have a village level power plant and get the electricity and give the electricity in that village from that power plant. So mini grids or micro grids kind of system, that is one of the opportunity that we have. Although at this time, a lot of people, the electric people who are in the electrical sector, say that we have extra capacity of generation than the demand at this time. We have more generation capacity than the demand, but the problem is the distribution and transmission. The transmission and distribution problem can be very easily tackled by solar, because you generate the power where you need it. You want to light a small light, 2 LED, then put a 3 watt panel there, or 10 watt panel there, or 75 watt panel there, or 1 kilowatt or 2 kilowatt or 5 kilowatt. You can start with 2 watt panel, 1 watt panel. So that is the kind of opportunity that solar has. And that is solar electric. Then we have the solar thermal as well, where we can take the heat from the solar rays and then convert into hot water, say, processing steam for cooking or for industrial processing. Steam is required in a lot of places. That's another area which government actually earlier wanted to encourage, but not many people entered in that space. But that is a very vast open space of solar thermal, where a lot of possibilities are there, because you don't have to actually convert energy from heat to from electron to photon and then bring it to light. Here you are taking thermal energy and using it as a thermal energy. So that's an opportunity. And of course, threats in SWOT, always threat is from our neighboring countries, because their government, unfortunately, in the one of the countries, the government is supporting in the industry so much that they can sell their product 30 to 35% cheaper than our cost. The cost of our manufacturing of solar cells or solar modules is X, and they are selling X minus 25-35%, because the government support is there. So that threat is there. So I would say that we should think about how SESI, Solar Energy Society of India, can bring all these points together and hear from other panelists today, and bring it together, bring it to the government, that if we want solar manufacturing to be Atmanirbhar, then these are the points that you must focus on, and this is how we will achieve Atmanirbharta in the field of solar manufacturing. And it is very necessary also, because situation like this, what we have faced, this is, I don't think anybody in his lifetime has faced this kind of situation, being home in for more than 60 days, more than 2 months. This kind of situation can happen anytime by any country. So we should be actually self-sufficient. As Prafulji mentioned, that we are now making PPE kits. That is very fortunate that we were able to do that. But suppose we were not able to do that, we still, our manufacturing capacity of our entrepreneurship, our engineers is still there. That's why we were able to do it. But if you leave the country for 50 years without any manufacturing, then after 50 years, our people will lose their ability to even think how to manufacture things. So from that point of view also, we should have manufacturing in-house, not only solar modules, but cell, wafers, and silicon. So that's what we should think about. This is how the companies which are there can think about. They are leaders in the field of solar today. Those who are represented here today, so they can all think together. We all can think together how we can go to the government from the platform of our Solar Energy Society of India, from the platform of SESI, and tell them this is what we need, and we want to start from solar silicon to wafer, cells, and modules. This is all I have to say right now, Prafulji. Let's see. There are other experts also in the panel, so let's hear from them.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I'm Harsh Govill from Adani Solar, and good to hear from Mr. Ajay Prakash and imminent concerns. And today we are doing this SWOT analysis. So first thing I would like to begin with is that if we talk of solar PV specifically, it is a technology-oriented industry, right? It needs a lot of research and development goes behind every change that comes to the market, and all this pays off in lower costs that we are looking forward in at a very aggressive pace in the years to come. And our neighboring country, specifically China, has been leading this race in cutting down cost and expanding their capacities so aggressively that they have a capacity right now which is almost double of the global demand. In the next 2 or 3 years, they will reach 3 times that capacity. Their costs are already 20% lower. And even if we try and expand and install the latest equipment, as many of us are proposing, many of the industries in India are proposing. Unfortunately, the COVID has been a bottleneck here. Then the Chinese costs are lower. Why? Because all of our raw materials, our logistics costs, I don't know how they will behave going forward. The logistics costs have already gone 5 times what they were earlier. And you never know how nations and organizations will capitalize on this scenario. So what is our strength here? As mentioned, it is, we have an orientation on the technology. We have a very big coastline. We have clusters of land located to the coast, and many ports which are working efficiently to make the supply chain more effective. Weaknesses is that our sector, the solar sector, is very much linked to the power sector. In fact, when you approach the banks, they classify the solar sector as power sector itself. So being linked to power sector, the flow of funds or the payments are linked to discoms. And if they don't, if the funds do not flow the right time, there is a huge amount of gestation period, and the manufacturers, they open LCs, they're lasting, of a very long duration, and it sometimes becomes a situation which is unviable. Of late, we have seen many relief measures being announced by our Honorable Finance Minister, and many of them are very tangible things which are very, surely to give us a benefit in the near future. Some of them like reduction of cross subsidies, getting rid of regulatory assets, and direct transfer of electricity subsidy. All these are some measures which can make our entire power system more effective. But the very important part is how to implement and enforce these reforms. This is something which the entire sector and the government authorities need to look into, that how we enforce these reforms so that the entire value chain benefits from them. Next comes is that we have an opportunity of, our current module capacity stands at around 14 to 15 gigawatt. But do we have the ancillaries for them? We don't. Our demand is growing. We are just around 4% of the global demand in terms of the capacity that we have. All these things propel us to invest and try find out ways of adding capacities and integrating ourselves backward to add more value to our product and reduce the costs. If you see the threats, as being a technology industry, China has been very upcoming in developing equipment and machinery for at every step of the technology change. And they have very closely set up a parallel industry which supplies the equipment, which specifically deals to the change that each industry has been spearheading. So some of the super league manufacturers in China have tied up with various types of manufacturers, which we don't have. If we need to lead the industry, we need to really get into some type of equipment manufacturing base in our country also. Secondly, on the cost, Chinese have a cost advantage definitely because of their well integrated value chain. This value chain gives them a good promise of low inventories, low working capital requirements, and a very good support even in all times of distress and like current circumstances of COVID across the world. So these are some threats which loom large over us. China is also driving the power, that is the power, efficiency of each module, the power that each panel can deliver. And as an Indian industry, as we migrate from one step to the other, China says that we have to reach the next level. So speed is the essence in our industry. If we have to do that, there are certain policy measures which the government has already announced. MNRE is very aggressively working with the manufacturers, but it has to be translated into reality. Ecosystem of ultra mega solar parks and a close cluster of working should help. The government has already asked every manufacturers or industry leaders to create land bank, and that is what is coming up. The major emphasis has to be on how fast we can enforce, how fast we can translate the advantage that is coming to us in terms of industries moving away from China and capitalize on giving them benefits and maturing the industry as fast as possible. Priority lending amongst these for solar industry is one part. We have there is, I think, I'm sure the finance minister announced about special subsidies which were given to manufacturing linked tenders with higher rate of incentives. So I think they are going to resume this. I'm sure this is going to be a very big incentive which will help the industry. Project specific funding for rooftops. If you see the overall portfolio, the rooftop is slated to be 40 gigawatt out of the 100 gigawatt solar portfolio that the government intends to achieve by 2022. So very specific lending for rooftop is required, which should also ensure that investments are taken care of in various ways and they are not taxable from the overall income, and some methods like this. As I think banks have already started taking cognizance of the fact that technology obsolescence is very high for solar PV industry. So some part of this has to be considered as a natural outcome if we need to grow this industry faster. Electricity duty right now in SEZs, it is free of, it's not charged for units in SEZ for 10 years. The same should be applied elsewhere to the units outside. And MNRE is closely working. I was attending a session with them last time, and they are very keen on bringing a parity between SEZ and DTA units. And I think this should help. Some of the benefits of SEZ, they should drive into the DTA part of it too. Apart from allowing higher operating cycle, I strongly believe that cluster manufacturing is something which can give us a very big advantage in expediting or the development of industry, growing the new units, expanding the existing ones, because you have a ready-made infrastructure in power, water, logistics, warehousing, and all sort of such supports. So what I feel is that it is the benefits and the reliefs that were supposed to come, they have been announced. They have to be materialized and enforced as fast as possible and at a much larger rate in close collaboration with industries, so that we see a larger advantage in the interest of this industry and as well as the nation. I thank you. Thank Ceci for giving me this opportunity. I think I spelled out what I wanted to. So thanks a lot.
Over to you, Ajit Shetty. Sir, you are please unmute your mic.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks everybody. I welcome everyone for the webinar, and thanks Ceci for organizing it. It's my co-panelists have already spoken about the experience post-COVID. I hope everybody have started working. I ask you to work safe and stay safe, because that is the first priority for us. While we work on the post-COVID, we have a lot of challenges now getting the manpower back to work. Yes, logistic is one challenge to dispatch, and its size there is, because it's currently it's talking about migration. People are moving out to different places, and in this challenge, I think we should be positive and focus on what we should do, what our neighboring country, because I know that the prices have dropped and they still try to drop. So the India being one of the largest solar market with China and US. The advantages are the strength for India right now is we have more sunny days, and we have our lower capital cost per megawatt for solar power plants. And mainly we have rich technical manpower to support on manufacturing as well as power plants. A good R&D support, you can see we have done well when the time of challenges. We can see the automobile sector. Mr. Ajay talked about the PP. When PM talked about challenges, what PP was zero, almost nothing. We are now manufacturing our own PP. Good experience in solar asset management and digitization. And coming to the weaknesses, I would say our major weakness is R&D and technology know. We are more concentrating on right now. We don't have more focus on less investment on advanced technologies. China, our neighboring country, China was successful in driving this, especially by Top Runner program. As explained earlier, the Top Runner program helped them to have intensive research for technology, which we sadly lack. And currently we manufacture multi-silicon technology, whereas the world has moved to notebook technology. They have already started introducing 500 watt modules, while we are only at 380 watts. And the next and main challenge is on the weakness. There is no, I mean, there's a need for the government drive, which is sadly lacking on R&D and technology. Second, already spoken by Ajay, Mr. Ajay and Harsh, it's on the regulatory compliance on setting up new factory. People are willing to come. We have in discussion with a lot of investors who would like to come to India, because there is no capital investment in India. We should invite our competitors who are out of the country, neighboring country, at least call them and ask them to put up plants in India, so that we also have the benefit of technology. Regulatory compliance, getting lands, putting up factories, licenses, and also environmental clearance is a big hurdle for people. They express that, can you take up this activity while we will do all the technology part of it. This is a bigger weakness which has to be addressed by the government of India. Unless that is done, then the investment doesn't come. While I see that while in automobile, all these things were driven by the government started Maruti and drew away the weakness. Then that's the reason why we have so much of automobile in factories in India. Third weakness, which Harsh also spoke, is neither do we have downstream manufacturing. We are only concentrating on 14 gigawatt module. Yes, we are good in module. We are less of cells, but we don't have downstream. I had opportunity to visit a lot of companies in China, where it is all medium scale, not even large scale. Junction box, the back sheet, sealants, only aluminum and glass you could consider as big manufacturing. and sadly we don't have much of them in India. We should push for those companies which is sadly not available in India, which will help us overcome our weaknesses. Even in chemicals, we have a lot of experience on chemical, India in pharma sector or in chemical sector, but we get our base from out of the country. And these are all international European countries who will be willing to come and put up plants. Basic issue is regulatory compliance are not the ease of putting up plants in India. Same case for inverters. Luckily, the recent past, a lot of people, even though we are good in power electronics, we still get our electrical components from Taiwan or from China. There are at least recent 3 or 4 inverter companies put up in India, yet we import inverters from out of the country. For opportunities, I would say Harsh spoke about the clusters manufacturing hub. Manufacturing hub is the thing which we have to do unless we put up manufacturing hub in India. And this is the right opportunity post-COVID for us to work towards manufacturing hub, start from the downstream and then work on the upstream on wafering, and government has to solidly support on that. Unless the government intervention is there, like in the automobile sector, in any country, they intervene. Like in the case of US, today US government funds on R&D so that the perovskite, which is supposed to be the future low-cost technology, is being supported by US through NRL and done in companies. Same way, China is been doing a lot of investment, and now from monopod, where they're doing 500 watts, they are going to pushing on HJT, heterojunction technology, which gives you maybe 600 or 650 watts. That is the opportunity we'll be looking at. Yes, people would say, why is going to the highest technology? I think we should look at that rather than produce 340 watts or 360 watts, which is today. Instead of looking at the cheaper cost of the product, we should always look at the better technology. Because all these clusters will create you employment across the value chain, and it should be set up at multiple hubs. Not just, I agree, Ash said we have a very good coastal line, but unfortunately, the coastal line, by putting up factories, all your factories are based near the coastal line. What we are seeing today, we are seeing a migration from Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Jharkhand throughout all over the country, reverse migration. To avoid that, I would strongly suggest that all these companies, majority of the companies, should be done in UP, Bihar, or in the areas where there is intense land bank, intense labor requirement availability, so that they should be supported with transport. Whatever the additional transport cost should be borne by the government. So inventory should not be managed by the companies. This will help you in reverse migration, which is happening today. I don't know when. Luckily, in manufacturing, probably it's always the local people who work in projects. In any other major activities, construction activity, you have people from migrants from outside, which is not a good trend for us. And cost, because yes, definitely we cannot be as cheaper as China. I would not say that we should not be cheaper as China. At least we should start manufacturing in a large gigawatt capacity in India. All the Chinese partners, call them. Same way Suzuki came and helped Maruti to grow up what it is, a monolith today. I think it's time we call the Chinese company, because they are the masters. They have the capability. They spend 10% on R&D, which unfortunately we neither even talk about R&D. We just copy that. So it's time that the government of India invests strongly on R&D, works with the industry, and not just the institute. There's no point of giving money to the institute when it doesn't percolate to the companies. Work with the companies, and it should be available for all, not just the large companies. Whatever is done in this company, and labs, you should have labs facilities so that the cost of your certification, multiple cost of certification should be avoided. The threat, yes, China is always a threat. We have to be open on that. They just drastically bring down the cost. Last year, we were at 440 watts. Suddenly, this 210 watt wafer is not a new technology. I can refresh you. This technology was bought by BP Solar. I was part of that long back in 2006. We tried with this technology because the size was big. There was no technology to handle 210 wafer, and it was launched by one of my colleagues in China. Today, it has been taken strongly by multiple companies. They are producing 530, 210. There are other rival companies who are producing 185 wafer, again doing 530 or 580 watts. Technology changes is the biggest threat, and sudden shift. This is because the top runner program in China, people are always funding their companies so to do better and better because they are paid additional the cost of modules is higher in China for top runners, where specifically the government says the minimum VAT is this. Only when that support is given by the government will people look at going for higher technology. And it should percolate from down the level. I'm not saying only big companies should work on that. Yes, the benefits of all these technologies we shared. It should be I was speaking to one senior gentleman who was saying that yes, you have been telling all these things, but it has not been implemented. Ash rightly said, speed is the essence. In China, the speed is the essence. Whatever they do, the threat comes from the speed. Frequent technology changes, wafer dimensions. From 158, they swiftly moved to one. Longi came as a disruptor, just moved to mono. Mono is nowhere. Today, mono difference between mono cell and mono multi-cell is hardly 3 or 4 cents. So it's 8 to 9 cents. So they are the biggest disruptors. We have to be positive. We need to do manufacturing cluster. We cannot continue to be dependent on China. The government, I would say, and on quality, yes, we are very good in quality, but we should not only focus on cost of the product. The cheapest cost of the product will always have effects. I'm not saying that everything is bad, but it will always have effect on 25 years reliability of the product. On policy support from the government, I would say energy policy. Each government have different energy policies. I would not talk about finance because Harsh has already spoken much about that. So I don't want to repeat, I will talk different. Energy policy, it has to be stable throughout the country. Every state cannot have its different energy policy, cross-subsidy, captive. If you have solar, they will say, no, don't want, we have to increase your cross-subsidy charges. Then solar will not happen. If government is to come out of the usage of coal in the next 4 or 5 years, then solar is the only thing which comes at a cheaper cost. It should be a uniform captive renewable energy policy throughout the country and promote open access for power purchase across the state for solar. And introduce minimum local content requirement. I would say that only government will be able, which they are doing now, 60% in line with countries like Saudi and SA. Saudi is doing, because it is a monolithic country, don't do have WTO. They also do have that. South Africa is also doing. Introduce viability gap in PPA tariff for 100% local content. This DCR cell and module is 100% BOS made in India. Then only all these small BOS, right now we do majority of the BOS. All the balanced BOS which we import like tractors, like inverters, everything should be made in India. At least for some percentage of whatever DCR they're telling, it should also be made in India BOS. And Harsh was very vocal about, yes, there should be a manufacturing policy for developing manufacturing hub. Key success for China becoming the major, I always call that 2009 Chinese invaded Europe and destroyed solar market. It was in 2009, all the monoliths of Europe and America went helter-skelter because Chinese came volume. They went for volume. Technology came, they just copied technology. Even now, majority of the technologies which China is doing basically was done by Europe or US long ago. The government has to come with the need for focus on manufacturing hub, capex subsidy. Today, whatever capex you buy from anybody, we don't have equipments you buy from somewhere. There is huge tax on that. Supply of water availability is not there. They'll say land, you search the land. Water is a major requirement for solar, at least for cell manufacturing or wafer manufacturing, not required for any of the downstream products. Subsidized power for all these solar. I'm not just talking about cell, module, wafer. I'm talking about the value chain throughout. CETP is a mandatory requirement for cell and wafer manufacturing. Government has to put a CETP, not say you go and put up your CETP. Housing facility for the worker. This is one of the major benefits of China. They have dormitories in all the factories. So this migration would have been avoided if this housing facility is there in the strategic manufacturing hubs. Right now, it's not there in India. So we allow them to stay wherever they want and allow them to suffer. Required ancillary manufacturing, that is, the downstream facility should be there for cell and manufacturing of wafer, the consumable which we import today, which are not a great technology. It can't be done in India. This has to be, I would say the government should insist it has to be done in India. Cost would be a factor. That cost factor has to be done by some subsidy. Whereas we are losing huge amount of forex by importing. Rather being an importer, we will be self-reliant Atmanirbhar. Hope I spelled it right. And we continue to do well in our own country. Technology funding is the last and bit which I already spoke. Government has to put a technology, including industry. There are a lot of people in Europe who would be willing to support us, but they would like to see. And now Europe, one prime example, Europe is putting up a 5 gigawatt, European Union putting a 5 gigawatt solar cell and model manufacturing in France, because they already decided they have to be self-reliant. With this, I conclude. I hope, and I thank Ceci again for inviting me for the call. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit Shetty Saab. Next, I would like to request Mr. R. Chelappan, who is the Managing Director of Select Energy Systems, to come and talk.
Good afternoon, very good afternoon, everybody. And it was very much insisted upon and then emphasized on, making local manufacturing as the topmost priority. 100% it is the topmost priority, and it's, I would say it is very urgent. It's a pre-COVID or post-COVID. India's self-reliance is absolutely a mandatory request from our side. We have been requesting through various forums that government should consider establishing a world-class semiconductor fab on topmost priority. See, tie up with the best-in-class semiconductor fab companies across the globe and establish a world-class semiconductor fab first. Then it would support the solar industry and also a lot of other wafer needs for semiconductor encapsulation of power devices and so on. That is the foremost requirement today. When we talk about China is selling product cheaper all over, it's the most important is that their wafer capability and the semiconductor fabs are phenomenal in size. GCL or Longi and those companies, it's all mind-boggling. And their ecosystem to produce complete modules of any kind, they are completely self-sufficient. How it all happened? China was originally not a semiconductor fab country, basically. For example, because of lack of space in Taiwan companies went there to China and then they established a lot of facilities like that. And now China is capitalizing all the presence of Japanese and Taiwanese in their land, and it's all now they do a big dominating role in the solar space, especially the solar space. Of course, they are dominating everywhere else. So for India, the topmost priority we request from our side to CECI and to MNRE and to the government of India that we should look at establishing our own semiconductor fabs on topmost priority. Like Mr. Harsh and Ajit, Mr. Ajay all expressed, it's very, very important for us to have the integration backward and forward. It's absolutely important. If only have enough raw materials, enough supply chain internally, then we save a lot of dollars, a lot of time, and we are ahead of technology as well. But most important is, okay, one side, our dear panelists talked about self-reliance and going higher technology and then have the value chain completely inbuilt. And also, most important is we have to consume them in a proper manner. We have to deploy the products produced in India for a lot of our own requirements. Today we are importing a lot, and the import has to be definitely substituted from local manufacturing. Like Mr. Ajay and Harsh and all of you said, Mr. Ajit all said, we have actually excellent capability to produce world-class modules. I think a lot of us are already tier 1 category, module manufacturers. We have a bankability very much, well thought about it, and we implemented that, and we have been practicing it. So when module capability is excellent and our deployment capability is also really very good, except for certain issues with regards to acquiring lands, right-of-ways and transmission lines, and getting the power flow and then getting the payment back. These are certain hurdles which I think over a period, those things can be, I think they can turn out to be better. And also, on the deployment side, most important is payment cycle. That is very critical. And when we talk about rooftop implementation, it's absolutely another priority that we all should look at. But state to state, the policies are completely different. And I would say, for example, in Tamil Nadu, if I look at an industrial cluster where there are 25 roofs, each roof is capable of taking 2 megawatt each, and the load for the plants are more than 2 megawatt, that means they generate the power on the roof and they have the right to consume the power right there. But the norms say, the rules say, you put a dedicated feeder to a substation next to you, and then from there you wheel back the power. According to me, it is ridiculous, because a lot of industrial estates are in the periphery of large towns and cities. Each industry has to have a dedicated line. Then where do we have land? Along the roads leading to urban cities, do we have land for erecting dedicated lines for each one of us? It is impractical, and it will look clumsy. Even if it's going to be practical, it will all look clumsy, because there will be 10 industries and 10 tower lines leading to the substation, and line losses. It's too much of regulations. What we all request is SECI should take it up very strongly. Our humble request to SECI that MNRE has to step in strongly in the side of discoms to allow rooftops. When the rooftop is capable of installing megawatt plus, please don't insist on dedicated lines, because each of those category of industries already they have high tension connection. All that we need is the point of power. The common coupling shall be within the campus itself, following all the regulations. We don't want any short circuit mechanism for the regulations. So the point of common coupling or re-injection point of those megawatts on the roofs shall happen within the premises itself, taking care of reverse power flow and all other protection in compliance with IER 1956 and IER 2013. All these are doable. We have excellent electrical engineers all across the country. We follow norms very strictly, and Indian electricity, the way of handling by the engineers is world class, no doubt about it. We have really world class electrical engineers and power electronics engineers, so we can deploy the power very effectively, removing all the hurdles like having dedicated feeders, wheeling back, and again relying on the payment from the government side too much. Of course, government have their own priorities and difficulties. I'm not blaming the government, but the mechanism can be simple and straightforward. This is very important. If that happens, the rooftop reaching the 40 gigawatts of a rooftop installation, I think it will get a serious momentum, and a lot of industries will get benefit out of that. And because industries will also stand to gain in terms of their expenditure, cost of electricity, in this difficult situation, certainly those industries will seek a bit of a relief in this regard. So apart from self-reliance in manufacturing, and India become completely self-sufficient in the solar raw material, right from starting from modules, all the balance of systems and implementation, etc. On the deployment side, we have to focus a lot. So net metering is another very, very critical aspect, especially for rooftop installations. I'm wondering why the net metering policy is not common across the nation. CRC has to step in and then make it as a mandatory thing for across the country, that net metering has to be one single national policy, which is driven carefully. And it is, again, there is no short circuiting of things, and there is no filterage of power, etc., etc. All those can be well maintained, because every single meter is today net ready meters. sitting in one place, we can monitor all the power plants across the country very easily. That's not a big deal. So I would insist on, removing the dedicated feeder concept for rooftop installations across the country, make a national policy. Maximum, we have to harvest energy from the roofs to the consumers of respective campuses. And then we have to talk about net metering options should be made easy. So more we create more, what happens is the demand is created. The consumers are becoming more and more. When we have more consumers, more opportunity to deploy modules, then we are talking about backward integration and then establishing a lot of manufacturing and technology. I think both will balance. The supply side, the consumption side, both will balance very well. I think we can grow, overall growth can be ensured by this. Specific to COVID, as like our other respected panelists talked about, we have issues with regards to mobilizing manpower back to the same strength as it was before. But raw material cost is not an issue now. At least one saving factor is raw material costs are not that bad. Raw materials are available. But the problem is mobilizing laborers to the full strength and the cost of logistics. I think these two things time will answer for these two things. But the policies and then, higher technologies, India going with semiconductor fabs of its own, I think these things are very critical. So I, thank Ceci for giving this wonderful opportunity. Maybe we can reconnect during question and answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. R. Chellappan, for your great industry perspective on solar manufacturing and the SWOT analysis. Our earlier panelists were talking about the R&D, the kind of amount what we are spending on R&D, which is negligible. And we have our young panelist, Dr. Parth Bhatt from Wari, to give us some insight on how R&D is taken in solar manufacturing. Mr. Dr. Bhatt, please take up the proceedings.
Thank you. Yeah, so very good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be a part of this webinar organized by Ceci. And I hope you all are able to see my screen. So with this, I'll take up my presentation. So our company is India's largest solar panel manufacturing company. And very soon, as all the panelists have talked about, very soon we are going to enter into cell manufacturing as well. Within the next quarter, we are expecting a 500 megawatt cell line, and additionally, by next year, we'll be having 1 gigawatt cell line as well. So our company holds that vision of entering right into the value chain of manufacturing in order to ensure that we are self-reliant and self-sustainable. So I'll just give a brief introduction of what our company is. We are in industry since last 30 years, and especially in solar industry since last 12 years. Before that, we were into instrumental gauges and we have a 2 gigawatt module manufacturing facility in our country, which is largest manufacturing capacity. And very soon we'll have, as I talked earlier, we'll have an integrated cell and module fab that will make us 2.5 gigawatt. We have shipped more than 3 gigawatt modules globally throughout the globe. We are listed as a tier 1 solar module manufacturer by Bloomberg since last 21 quarters. We are also, recognized as #1 module supplier by for 2019 and also for Q1 2020 by 2 independent research reports like JMK Research and Mercom. We are also into EPC business, and we have commissioned more than 600 megawatt plus different projects throughout the globe. We have executed 10,000 plus small projects of solar pumps and telecom and rooftop projects. Our products are exported in more than 68 plus different countries. We have more than 2,500 employees, and we also have a wide range of sales network throughout the country that provide local solutions, local solar solutions. That is, we have almost 350 different sales and service centers throughout the nation. Briefly about our portfolio, our prime business is solar module manufacturing. We also are into module mounting structures, EPC services, rooftop. We also have done floating solar. We also deal in on-grid and off-grid inverters. Recently, we have also entered into energy storage solutions, where we have just opened up with a manufacturing plant for lithium-ion batteries. It's not yet about manufacturing cells, but we are assembling lithium-ion batteries. We also are into the small solar products like water pumps and street lights. We also have solar thermal solutions, and we also have a wide range of franchise network that we go through with our solar partners. So talking about today's topic on impact of COVID-19, what here I'm showing you is the recent forecast by Bloomberg New Energy Finance about the solar installations that are expected post COVID-19. And what we see here that there is going to be a global threat to the PV installations with new things coming up every day, what we see in our news. So it is expected that almost a 20% reduction is expected in the global solar capacity. And especially when we look at India, the reduction is significant as 50%. So what we see is it was expected that India might have some 11 or 12 gigawatt of solar PV by 2020, but the scenario has changed, and post-COVID, there are some cancellations in tenders. There are other problems of supply chain as discussed by my earlier members, and also the recent threat of workforce availability. So considering all these aspects, it is expected that for India the solar sector is going to be rough for this year, but let us hope for the best. Again, when we look at the global scenario here, again here in this graph, I show research from Wood Mackenzie, where they also expect that almost a 20% dip in global installation capacity is going to be there for sure. So the first and prime reason for this is going to be, it is because of various supply chain threats that we all are aware about, because logistics has completely stopped, and that brings an imminent threat of supply chain. And that's why this global disruption has prompted the businesses to diversify. And the first thing that all the businesses have to take care is to de-risk their supply chain, because if you don't have the material, then there is no way you can run your factory. So the first and foremost de-risking factor should be supply chain. So what we think is that a single country model for manufacturing and sourcing is a thing of past, because we cannot focus, or we cannot keep our dependency on a single country or a single source for manufacturing and supply of raw materials. So there should be a multi-sourcing strategy to reduce risk of the supplier default, while it also encourages healthy competition between different countries. So there should be a system wherein many different countries come up together with manufacturing of different raw materials and pour in their expertise. That could de-risk any industry's supply chain. Again, when we consider the impact of COVID-19 on our factory, what we have seen is that we had a complete 30 days shutdown of the factory during 22nd March to 22nd April. And that has resulted in lower turnover from what we have expected for the last financial year. And we had to pay for that. Again, lockdown in China, we were fortunate that, Chinese New Year had coincided with this COVID-19 situation in China. So we already planned some sufficient inventory well in advance in order to counter that, and we were lucky that that didn't impacted us that much. And from 22nd April, we have resumed our manufacturing with lower capacity of 30% CUF, maintaining the social distancing rules and all the precautions that are required. And when we see in the long term, then, as my other colleagues have discussed much in details about all these factors, like, increase of localization of cell and other BOS manufacturing within the country. Yes, I totally agree with them. It should be there, and there should be some strong plans by the government and both by the industry. They need to unite and come up with a strong roadmap for this, and there should be a way out of this. Again, the CUF is going to get affected for 2020, depending, on the virus, as we know that it has not ended yet, and there could be a second wave, or there could be some multiple waves. We don't know what impact it is going to bring up. Or if we are fortunate enough, there could be some vaccination, and then that could change the scenario entirely. Again, there should be, again, one of the other factors, that is that, the financially weak players, the more and more the lockdown gets extended, the businesses are going to be worse for the financially weak players, and that could, result in many mergers and many what you say, bankrupt companies, which is not good for any manufacturing sector. Yeah, so that's it from my side.
Thank you, Parth, for your presentation. Now I would like to move on in this webinar, and will request Sri S.K. Mahajan, Managing Director and CEO of IB Solar, to give his talk.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's very nice that we are at a SESI platform talking about the critical issues facing the solar energy. See, we have a lot of strength, like international solar alliance offices in India. We have got a lot of solar availability in India. This more or less has been talked about by other panelists also. So I'll just brief, and our thrust to build up agriculture sector, because there is a lot of demand which will be coming in agriculture sector this year. Maybe we may not get much demand for the rooftop or other big projects, but solar sector, agriculture will remain a key customer during this time. Now, talking about total on self-reliance, we have to talk about first machines availability. We have to talk about other raw materials, like Mr. Chalapan talked about electronics, inverters, which are not being manufactured in India. Or there is a small quantity of manufacturing which is not up to the mark. Then raw material availability. We have got very few manufacturers in glass, and we are dependent on our China or other countries for the glass also. But there is again anti-dumping on those products, which is of the high power thing. Like coming to other raw materials, EVA, backsheet, all have got constraints. All have constraints, and we are again dependent on other countries. As regards solar cell availability, we hardly produce of the total capacity what we are solar panel manufacturer. Maybe few percentage is being catered by Indian players. And when it comes to panel manufacturing with the domestic content cell, it becomes very big issue to get domestic cells at that time. These are the basically points which on the raw material side or the supply chain part. We have got a lot of opportunities as such for, like I mentioned about agriculture, rooftop, power plant, big power projects are coming. Now in those rooftop, there is again net metering issue. Some states have different policy, others have different policy. People are not allowing us to have net metering for the commercial establishments. In UP, in the state where we are, in Uttar Pradesh, there is no net metering available to the commercial. So there is a constraints of again rooftop installations. As regards now we coming to total, because we are totally dependent, as on date we are dependent on China. We import maximum raw material from there, we import maximum inverters from there, and as regards raw material also we are importing from there. And again competing with the Chinese vendor. Again competition with the Chinese vendor, because even today, whatever the capacity we are producing, like big players, Pari, Tata and all that, still our dependence on Chinese is more than 70 to 80%. There the question of profitability is a very critical factor. If you look at the solar energy players, I would say the profitability is a critical issue for everyone, all the manufacturers mostly. So these are basically points which I would request CESI to take forward with the MNRE and other ministries. One, to have a consistent policy in terms of rooftop or other solar energy field. And then we are talking about the BIS and for other BIS, IEC certification, which itself is a big cost. As a MSME industry, I can say maybe for the big player, the cost is not big. But for us, spending 30-40 lakhs every 3 years for the IEC certification, BIS becomes a very big issue for all of us at that juncture. This is what I wanted to say. I'm very thankful to CESI for arranging such a type of platform and having very vocal discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahajan sir. Now we are moving to the question and session. I will request all panelists to be ready to take the questions, and our president, SSC President Pathak sir, to look at these questions and share it to the panelists who can answer that.
So we have received the questions and that has been passed to panelists. I would like to request the panelists to answer that. We have 2-3 questions. Those questions are already with the panel. Mr. Govil, please. Hello.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute. So the question was, how much investment would the solar manufacturing sector in India require in the next 5 years? You see, I would say here that just for the cell and module, if we talk, we are at 3 gigawatt and 10 gigawatt manufacturing capacity, right? And our target is, even if we don't say 2022 100 gigawatts, we call it 2025. Our cost of putting up a facility is around 0.7. I mean, natural industry cost is 0.7 to 0.8 million dollars per megawatt. So if you can multiply this with the remaining capacity that India needs, you will find the cost. So Chinese are aggressively leading this because they have optimized the cost, and that's what we have been talking about in this forum since the beginning.
Okay, thank you. I would like to request Sri Ajay Prakash Srivastava to give his concluding remark.
I think, Prafulji, this was a very good session. Lot of new things came up. The one of the thing that Mr. Govil mentioned from Adani about delinking of powers, delinking of solar energy sector from power sector, especially for financing. Sir, this has been the demand of solar industry for many years, and we have been constantly following up with RBI and the government. And I think we should continue that follow-up with CC platform also, that they should consider solar sector, renewable energy sector as a separate sector from the financing point of view. So Prafulji, this will be one of the points that SECI can take up with the RBI or with Niti Aayog. And then another point that he mentioned was about the lending for rooftop. That is a good point. I think we should encourage the banks to, some of the banks actually started, when we discussed that long time ago, some of the banks said when you are buying a house or when you are constructing a house, if you put in your solar power cost as part of that house, that we will finance it along with the house. So this could be one of the things that SECI can take up with the bank, that now the solar rooftop rooftops are not very expensive. So this could be very easily considered by the bank to cost as a equity of the as a home loan. It could be part of the home loan. So these are the two good suggestions we can take up. And one of the idea that Mr. Shetty mentioned was the R&D support that government should give. I think that is a very vital issue, and this R&D support is very necessary for two things. One is increasing the efficiency of the cell, that will automatically bring the cost further down. Already cost is very down compared to what it used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago. But we have to continue to find the ways to increase the efficiency of solar cells and modules. And also we have to find new way to the balance of system manufacturing in India that we have to think about. And he suggested domestic content requirement. I think this government is already doing, and they should continue to, we should continue to force the government. There should be more domestic content requirement in all the tenders they bring out. And they found a way around in WTO. There was some objection in WTO, but our government found a way around to insist on domestic content. So that's a good thing for solar. Mr. Chelappan mentioned about semiconductor fab. It's a good idea. I mentioned also in my beginning that we should think about solar cell silicon, solar grade silicon, and that would be. I was concentrating on solar. That's why I mentioned solar grade silicon, which is much cheaper to manufacture than semiconductor grade silicon. So if the government can put up the semiconductor grade silicon facility, then the solar is just a byproduct of that. Whatever is not pure enough goes into solar. So, and he mentioned also simpler rules for rooftops. That is very necessary, which is important, because if you want to encourage the rooftop on houses and on industry, then rules should be simple. And net metering is something that we all are concerned about. Mr. Mahajan also mentioned, Mr. Chelappan also mentioned. These net metering is something that we should really take up from SECI point, because that is what will encourage the rooftops. And I'm not against a large size power plant, as I mentioned earlier, but I think the rooftop is the way to go for solar, because then you don't have to go for transmission losses, and these all other things, and distribution. One of the things that is lacking is still in our power sector is the distribution, last mile distribution and transmission. That is still a problem. And even if you see in Delhi, one of the person mentioned in Delhi that 17% losses in Delhi are due to theft, power theft. We all are who are living in Delhi are paying 17% more for because people are not paying their bills and stealing the power. So if you have solar rooftops, then one of this big problem of distribution goes away. So we should really encourage this point from our SECI platform about net metering. We can take the help of Mr. Chelappan and Mr. Mahajan to draft the representation to the government and insist upon net metering policy. And another thing that Mr. Mahajan mentioned, which is very important, sir, especially for MSME sector, is cost of certification. That very high cost of certification that the MSME sector has to face, ISO certification and these other BIS and other certification, the cost is very high. So we could take up that issue also with the government, that we should they should find some way for MSME sector to reduce this cost. These were the points to discuss today, and I think SECI should take up some of these points, and we could, Prafulji, we could connect with our panelists again and connect all the data and make a presentation to the government. And one of the question I saw from Mr. Chando, who is very famous solar man of India, is saying nobody talks about government, what is wrong in the government policy. I think, sir, we all know what is wrong in the government policy. Rather than pointing out the wrong in the government policy, we should give them suggestion. And since you are one of the very old solar expert in the country, Mr. Ajay Chandok, I was talking about. So you should give your suggestion to us. We will take up with you. We can forward it to the government, follow up with them. And in my last, I think in 22 years in solar, I have seen that if you follow with the government with a good reasoning, good logic with your questions, they do listen. It takes some time. It takes long time, but they are always listening. That's why we are able to bring so much changes, considering what it was used to be 20 years ago. And when I started my solar business, and I think more than 20 years ago, what it was and what it is now is a huge difference. And it is only because a lot of things SECI has taken up in last 20 years. Since I'm associated with SECI, lot of things we have taken up, and lot of our suggestions have been taken incorporated by the government. So we are not afraid to bring our point to the government, and we should just find the right person and approach to them, bring up our point, give the logic, give presentation. It doesn't happen in one meeting, that's for sure. It happens maybe 2, 3, 4 meetings and follow up, but we can achieve those things. So I thank you, SECI, for organizing this, and thank you, Prafulji, and thank the team of SECI, our Mr. Prasid, Mr. Harsh Kumar, Mr. Hari Shankar, sorry, Mr. Hari Shankar and Prasid Kumar, and thank them for organizing this very nice webinar, and we should do it more. Thank you very much.